interruptions. I hate that. I'm disturbed. I'm here to talk about game jams. First, my name is Kotaro Fujita. I'm a mobile web and game consultant. So these are some of the game apps that I have up there. I also help run Field Game Mechanics, which is a local indie game meetup that meets here every first and third Thursday at Indie Hall. Wait, did I just screw up my own slides? That's one question we get about games. Okay, yeah. So it's not quite right in terms of my slides, but I'm just going to roll with it. So how to start? Normally, people come into our meetups and they ask, how do you usually, what's the best way to get started? People want to actually get into games. They might be accountants, designers, they come from a different angle, musicians. Maybe their part-time job is not even closely related to any form of development at all. And usually my recommendation is like participate in the game jam. That's actually a great way to get started. Just make sure I got that right. Oh, these are slides are longer than I thought it would be. Okay, this is a little bit of a cheat. This is actually a bar camp slide that I was trying to compress, and I didn't realize I had sub-slides in there. Anyway, there are different types of game jams. One is like a one-day jam. Usually I call them idea jams. So they're just like people get together, they have a theme, and they kind of like come up with the idea, but they don't necessarily create any prototypes. It's just a little too quick to get around. So a good example of this is the Iron Chef Jam, which is like basically almost not even one day. It's like maybe about 4 hours, where you're given a theme very much in the tradition of Iron Chef. So in this case, people were given like a little bit, a few other materials to actually make the game, which is kind of funny. 24-hour jam. So it's a little. When I say one day versus 24 hours, one day is like within a time frame of like shorter than 24 hours. So I shouldn't really call it like a night jam. Versus like this one is much more like a legit like overnight. I come in at 5 p.m. one day on a Friday, and then I leave. I finish at 5 p.m. on a Saturday. And those are actually pretty good in terms of like getting enough of a feel of what that type of jam would feel like without like losing a lot of sleep. So as opposed to like a 48-hour game jam, where it's like you spend 2 days, two nights basically, 3 days ultimately, just working on a game, and usually it's within a compressed time frame. So yeah, make sure you get some sleep in between. 2-week jams is something like what we do exclusively. So that's just our Field Game Mechanics thing. That gives people just enough time to feel the pressure, but not enough time to feel stressed about it. So usually, and I'll go into that later on, yada yada. I'm just going to go through all these real quick. So what is a game jam? Basically a hackathon for games. And of course, what is a hackathon? Fair question. Usually, a group of people will come together, and a theme will be announced. People will sit down, maybe form teams, come up with ideas for a game they want to make or a project they want to make based on that theme. Everybody starts out enthusiastic, happy, and ready to work. And some people bring their own interesting equipment. So this person is our audio guy here, so he likes to make music. He makes really good music manual. And somewhere in between, maybe you kind of, need a little bit of sleep because like you've gone, literally 24 hours-ish, and then all of a sudden you kind of crash. And sometimes you get a little bit weird in the middle of the night. This is Jake. This is one of our organizers, and this is somewhere in like maybe 3 a.m. in the morning when he was working on his game with his team. And then finally, at the end, people will get together and play test your game. Some people, whether it be within the community or outside. And sometimes in Field Game Mechanics case, we give out prizes. So like this little handmade laser engraved plaque was given to this group of people after a 48-hour game jam. So yeah, a typical approach to what a 48-hour game jam might look like is like day one, you come up with these great ideas, and then you start prototyping. That's usually the thought. And then somewhere in like day 2 area, you're panicking and crying because you realize that this idea is horrible, and you have to commit to it. Or you were like, I don't know how I'm going to come up with this idea because this JRPG style game that I'm making is going to go way beyond it is way beyond scope. So somewhere in there, you struggle, and then maybe you might play test it and like come up with a general like scope of what you're ultimately going to build. Maybe if you're smart, you take a nap somewhere in between there, and then at the end you start crunching to the deadline. So what's interesting about that is that this kind of fits in a very compressed time frame what it really feels like to make a game in terms of the optimism in the beginning, the sort of dread and panic and struggle in the middle, and sort of that rush to the finish line at the end. So it's somewhat unique in the sort of game development environment. So some of the crazy themes from these jams include, this is actually, it's hard to see because of the projector and the light, but this is called Resistor. This was made by Anthony Amada and Nicole Amada. I don't know if you know them, but they're really big in the board game development scene here in Philadelphia. And this was their first game that they ultimately published. But this was created in a game jam called the Oasis Jam, which is basically go down the list of all of the songs that Oasis made and pick a theme. And Anthony hated that so much, he created something called Resistor, which was to resist this idea. This was part of a move your body jam. So basically, we had an iPhone attached to a black wig that we harnessed on that person's head. And your job was to headbang to the beat of Iron Maiden, like this. And apparently, it was coded so that if you like swung it like this, it would actually have multipliers. So better score, in other words. This was a puppet jam. So this person actually made a game pieces to actually sell. It was like a 1-month jam that was actually 2 months, because 1 month was to actually make the game, and the next month was actually to sell the game. And whoever made the most money won the jam, which I thought was interesting. This again was the Iron Chef Jam, which people could get together and based on a theme. It was only 4 hours, and we actually had like actual local celebrity judges. So like Alex Miller was one, and Ophidian was another. This was Outdoor Jam. So this was basically an example of outdoor jam. Is anything you can do outdoors. So in this case, this was ultimate hula hoop meets golf. So basically, you threw the ball across the field, and then everybody would toss a hula hoop, and whoever got to the ball first wins. We've also had jams that were catered just strictly to the, I forgot the name of this place, it's in Northern Liberty.
Schmidt's Commons.
Yeah. So we had to make a game specifically for that TV.
Change the name.
Oh, they did?
I used to know it as the Quad, so I don't know. I forgot what the name of this jam is. I just thought it was kind of cool that these people spend the time to make a Dungeons and Dragons beginner's guide. So this book was the only thing that they made. And this pamphlet was the only thing that they made. And it was basically a starter guide on how to make a Dungeons and Dragons game, or start their own, which I thought was amazing. Some games I've personally made in the jam, and I don't want necessarily for you to care so much about that I made it, but the fact that of the progression. So this was the first one, which was called the Candy Jam, which was in a response to Candy Crush, trademarking the word candy or saga. So the jam was you had to have a game that had candy or saga in it. So I made like a stripped down version of Match 3. I called it Candy Suck.
You got one more minute, Kotaro.
What's that?
One more.
All right, I'm going to go real fast through all these. In fact, I'm going to bypass all this and go straight to the. That's not necessary. One thing I do want to point out is this was one jam I'm particularly proud of. We made a game called Aaron's Quest. It was a side scroller of Aaron. Aaron was a developer at Cycle Prime, and he was moving to Germany. So we made a game for him because it was an Aaron jam of him running through Philadelphia, going to Germany, and for some reason, because he's going to Hamburger, Germany, we had him fight the hamburger as the final boss. And then we found out later on Facebook that we found out, like somewhat recently in development, during development, that he was getting engaged, so we had his soon-to-be wife in the game, and as a congratulations. It's probably the only game that we ever made that I never put up on itch.io, so it's never been published anywhere as a project. So why do it? Benefits to both participants and the host. Why would you ever be stuck with a bunch of people doing crazy things? It's just fun. It's just one of the things where, like, when you're in that time frame with people, there's so many stories that happen inside of that bubble of 2 days or 1 day, and then watching people play your game. I think there's something to be said, I guess, like, of having people try your game out for the first time and getting that instant response and reaction that you would not expect, whether they, they liked it, they didn't like it, as well as having the opportunity to take that game somewhere else. So half of those games in the Fujitron were originally Game Jam games, and so now we've taken that to the Franklin Institute. We're taking it to MagFest. We took it to MagFest once already, and some of the interesting stories between that is the fact that this was a game jam that I won with this team here, missing one person. But 3 of these people was their first time participating. So at the very least, they sort of gained a great experience from that. And the one in the middle who's holding it, he had a really shitty week. His car crashed, and he had his pet had some issues. So we gave him that, but he worked the hardest to make that game. And for the most part, he was the audio guy. So the game would not be anything without the audio. So suggestions for people who are hosting events. Make sure it's a nice, safe space, ideally insured, ideally with a code of conduct, and ideally very inclusive. Don't push any particular products. Sometimes there's like hackathons that have like, use our APIs, use this particular SDK, I'm sure they're reasonably ideal for that company, but what you want to look for is the opportunities to open up open up to different ideas based on the theme of the idea. And it's kind of restrictive to the people participating, and I think it's a lost opportunity if you don't leave that opportunity open. Provide food and drinks. This is more of an optional suggestion, but ideal, especially if it's in a remote location. And again, be open to ideas. That's the whole point of game jams and hackathons. It's like sometimes the craziest ideas and opportunities happen within these jams.
Kotaro, you want to wrap this up so we can do questions?
Suggestion for jammers: get sleep, pace yourself, manage scope, so no JRPGs, and definitely the journey is the reward. You should definitely take that into account. Try to work with new people. Your skills matter. Challenge yourself, and ideas matter. And of course, January is Global Game Jam. January 25th to the 27th, happening at UArts. So that's a great entry point. I recommend it. And these are some references. I'll have the slides available somewhere. And that's it. Any questions? Yes.
I will do 5 minutes for questions. I'm going to rearrange the lights.
What is the scope of the types of people who do this? Are they mostly like making games that they want to publish, or are they doing games for business, or is it like a wide variety?
I think there's a wide variety, and what was kind of funny is a lot of people come in with maybe that intent to like, oh, I want to make a game. I certainly did. It certainly was for me when I did my first game jam. I was like, I just want to make something that I'm going to put on the App Store, and it's like that's not what you're doing. Ultimately, you're building a sort of glorified prototype because you're slinging code like nobody's business. And believe me, we've had some Git issues back in the day.
Just back in the day?
Back in the day.
Okay.
Well, no. Well, we used Unity, so but that's different. Anyway, it's gotten a lot better. But there are a lot of people who come in who don't know how to code, who almost, a lot of times it's kind of weird because I'm like, your skills is what brings the value. So you can be a musician, and holy crap, music and audio just changes the game. It gives it the nice wrapper that makes the game feel like a game, versus like somebody who might be a good storyteller, a good writer, a good designer, a good graphic designer. I mean, crap, there's so many crappy UI that really benefit from a good sense of aesthetics. you have a team that's bigger than 4, you need somebody to be like, all right, you know what, I am sacrificing myself and I need to lead this team. Like, that's the thing.
Speaking of that, like, how do you break your teams out to make sure that you have people who are good at like the animation and the audio and all this stuff? Because I feel like it's so many different.
So it's just whatever the person's willing to do. You know, in a game jam, you can't be picky in that regard. But if somebody says, you know what, I'm willing to do that, that means a lot. Because in the end, like, you're not here to make, like, you know, like the most amazing. I mean, I try my best, and part of the thing is to try your best. But at the same time, you're trying to learn. This is an opportunity to experiment, to test yourself, to be in a safe environment, in a compressed environment where you're not spending too much time, but you're spending enough to see whether or not it feels right. And if you want to go forward with it, I would say like 99.9% of the time, most game prototypes, you know, we'll never see anything beyond, you know, what that was. But it also has long-lasting effects in terms of like, sometimes it's something to show to your employers. It's something to show to your friends and colleagues. Maybe somebody might go, hey, like, we've worked well together, let's work on another one. And so I didn't get a chance to show my own progression, but I think there's value in saying, like, when I started, I was just making some very simple, dumbed down stuff. And over time, I had learned, like, each skill kind of built on top of each other. And so I would take strips of code here, or lessons I learned from a previous one and apply it to, like I had a first-person simulation game that I applied to another first-person game, or I would do a lot of 2D sprite animations, and I would say, well, I'm not particularly great at it, but I know enough to be dangerous, and I'll leverage a friend of mine who can do that much better, and I would just integrate it into the game. So there are, like, I think there are opportunities that are not, it's not overtly obvious when you're doing it at that moment.
So that's about 5 minutes, and I'm sure if you have more questions, I think Kotaro, I imagine you'd be happy to talk more about Game Jam.
Sure.
So give it up one more time for Kotaro. And Joe, you're about set?
I am all set, yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to send that to the screen.
Oh, thank you so much.
And do you want to have the computer on hand to...
that would be cool, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for letting me use it.
For sure. Just connect that right quick. Okay, so if you want to
cool.
take that.
Thank you so much.